Alright, our next one is going to be family. The sun warmed your skin from its place in the sky, and you closed your eyes, enjoying the mix of heat with the pleasant breeze that drifted past you. You and Lee had spread out a blanket on top of one of the hills behind your house and had been relaxing there for a while now. Lee had come over earlier in the day, and while a range of activities had been discussed, from staying home to heading down to the beach, a picnic on the hill had been the choice you both settled on. A small spread was laid out in front of you. Some bottled water, soft drinks, as well as chips and sliced fruit. You sat up and reached for a snack, listening to Lee talk away about the musical she had gotten to see a few days ago. It was unbelievable. There was singing, dancing, and crazy stunts, and it was all done live right in front of my face. Maybe one day we could go together. I've got to see more shows like that. You smiled at Lee's enthusiasm, knowing how much she enjoyed singing and performing. And she was good at it, too. You had gotten the chance to hear her sing a couple of tunes, and you knew she put a lot of effort into it. You didn't like to sing, but you had been told you were good at it. Whether that was true or not, there were other things you preferred doing more. I wonder if maybe we could put on our own show. Think of how fun it'd be. We could perform for our parents and ask our friends and some other people to come and watch too. It'd totally work. I don't know about that. The idea gave you stage fright. But wouldn't showing off to everybody be fun? Thought of an audience made you feel queasy. Not really. Are you really super sure? You have so many skills you could show off to the masses.
Are you sure?
I'd rather do something else. Lee seemed a little disappointed, but she nodded and respected your wishes all the same. What did you have in mind? The two of you lay back on the blanket and blazed in the sun, throwing ideas back and forth on what you could fill your time with. The beach was nearby, so you could go swimming or collect shells, or find something to do back at home after all. In the end, nothing was tempting enough to move you from your current position, so you continued chatting with Lee and nibbling on your snacks while the sun traveled in the sky overhead.
All right.
So, how are your neighbors doing? You haven't spoken about them lately. You knew Lee wasn't talking about neighbors generally. Or down the street. She wanted to hear about the Holdens across the road. It was no secret that she liked to keep up to date on what was happening with them, or more specifically, Cove. There weren't many other people your age around to talk about. They're great. That's good. I hope I get to see Cove soon. She was wanting something juicier, but it couldn't be helped. Lee loved to chat about others' relationships and would always ask you for the details on people you both knew. Hey, did you want to see if Cove would join the picnic? He's busy this afternoon. Yesterday he said he and his parents were going out. They might be fishing on the docks by his dad's store. Aw, that's too bad. I bet he'll have a great time with his mom and dad, though. The sun slowly began to set, the sky turning a rosy pink and then warm orange. The backgrounds are gorgeous as well in this game. Everything is so pretty. It's too bad Derek isn't in the neighborhood today. I like him. Yeah, he's a good person. No. I knew you'd think so. So exactly how much do you like him? Or maybe there's someone else that I haven't heard of yet. Lee wiggled her eyebrows at you suggestively, and you knew exactly what she was implying. Lee, there's nobody I like that right now. Lee huffed in disappointment, pursing her lips together. Darn, but you promised to tell me if that changes, right? I'll do it for you. Maybe.
Boo.
You knew her whining wasn't serious. That's just how she was. Speaking of crushes, there is one boy I think is pretty cute. You leaned back on your elbows and listened as Lee talked about her crush, all in great detail. It was nice to have her telling you a little gossip for once, rather than always trying to get it out of you. Finally, you both decided to pack everything up and head back home for the evening. Upon walking through the front door, you were met by your moms and Elizabeth hovering around each other in the living room. Tension hung thick in the air as the three of them turned to you and Lee, frowning slightly. You had interrupted something. Exactly what? You weren't sure. Hello.
Oh.
Hi, Claire. Hello, Lee. Welcome back. The room fell quiet again, with no one quite knowing what to say. You felt incredibly awkward, but the silence didn't last long. You don't have to stop just because those two are here. There's no reason to try keeping it a secret. Elizabeth was mad, with her arms folded defensively over her chest, but your moms nodded in agreement with her.
Well...
Elizabeth was asking about her parents. Her biological ones. The world spun around you at the news. You couldn't understand. Why was this happening now? When you glanced at Lee, she shuffled her feet uncomfortably, as though she didn't know if she should be there or not anymore. He didn't know either. Your moms had always been open and honest about the fact that neither of them had given birth to you or your sister, but the details hadn't been fully explained before. It made sense that Elizabeth didn't know a lot about her biological parents and wanted to know more. You just hadn't ever thought you'd accidentally stumble into it. Elizabeth looked at your parents expectantly. She wasn't going to let the unintentional interruption derail things. We don't want to keep that information from either of you. It's your right to know your past, but we did want to wait until you asked us to hear yourselves. Well, it's happening now, so... Your moms shared a nervous glance, and Ma took in a quick breath before speaking again. I adopted you from the Philippines when you were just a baby. Elizabeth dropped her arms, her eyebrows shooting upwards in surprise. Wait, I wasn't born here?
No.
No, you weren't. You could clearly see that your sister was appalled by this information. You struggled even more with what to do or how to react. Am I going to have to pass some tests to even be a citizen?
No.
No, you were adopted into the country, but take care of things. You're already a citizen. You have nothing to worry about. I followed all the laws when it came to bringing a child into the U.S. Nothing can be held against you. Elizabeth sighed, placated with that information, but still far from happy. Who were my parents, as people? Why did they put me up for adoption in the first place? Ma softly put her hands on Elizabeth's shoulders, trying to provide some support before she gave her the answer.
I'm so sorry.
Sweetie, your parents were reported to have died. They didn't go into details on the specifics of how, but you were an orphan. I wish we had better news for you, Elizabeth. Elizabeth was torn between emotions, her eyes filled with tears as she threw her hands in the air, settling on enraged. Great, so I can never meet them, even if I wanted to. Not that I could have anyway, since they live in another part of the world when they were still alive. Elizabeth turned her back on you and your moms and stormed off, sprinting up the stairs and to her room before anyone could stop her. I have to go and talk to her. Ma immediately started to follow her, but Mom gently held her by the arm and shook her head. We should give her a little space to process it all. Your Ma's head hung low, but she stopped walking. With Elizabeth now gone, the two of them seemed to remember you, and Lee were still standing awkwardly off to the side. I'm sorry you had to see all that. It's not how I expected it would have happened when the time came. But since it's the topic of the day, Claire, is there anything you'd like to ask? You deserve to know, after all. Lee patted your back and gave you a supportive look. No, I don't want to hear. Not right now. That's perfectly fine.
I understand.
You can always ask later if you ever change your mind. You smiled at them gratefully. It was nice to know they wanted to be open with you about the topic, even if it wasn't a talk you wanted to have now. No one seemed to have any words after that. You wanted to see Elizabeth. You were worried about Elizabeth, even though she had been so angry when talking to your moms about everything. You could see she was clearly sad. You headed over to the stairs and up to her room. It would be best to speak to Elizabeth alone. There was more chance of her opening up to you that way. Waiting in front of your sister's door, you raised a hand to knock on it. There was no answer for a good minute or two, and when you jiggled the handle, you found it was locked. Raising your hand again, you knocked louder this time, thinking she must have her headphones on and so couldn't hear you. When she didn't answer the door a second time, it was clear to you that she either still couldn't hear or was just straight up ignoring you. It hurt to be shut out, especially right now. You wanted to get out of the house. I'm gonna go out just for a little while. I'll be back before it's really late. Your mom's nodded in understanding, trusting you to make the best call for yourself. Without knowing where you really wanted to go, you began to walk down the street quietly, dragging your feet. You turned and kept walking, unsure of what else to do. Everyone else had been so upset, and you didn't have the first idea on how you could help. Eventually, you found yourself at the beach, your feet sinking into the soft sand while you looked out over the ocean. You took off your shoes and paced the sand over to the water's edge, letting the cool ocean swirl around your bare feet. It was comforting being there, with the ocean breeze rustling your beige hair and the smell of salty water filling your nostrils. Eventually, you took a seat down on the ground, watching the sun as it dipped down further and further towards the horizon before it disappeared completely. The sky shifted from blue and pink to orange and then the deep blue of night. A sudden shout drew your attention away from the sea. Someone was calling your name. Your head snapped to the source of the yells. At the edge of the beach, where the grass met the sand, was a silhouette in the darkness, but the person was still unmistakable to you. It was Cove. What was he doing here? His eyes settled on you ahead. Realizing you were in fact there, he rushed down the shore to where you sat. You could tell he was out of breath when he approached. You rose to meet him. Cove, did something happen? No, not to me anyway. I wanted to know what happened to you. I went to your house to say hi, but your parents said you were gone, that you needed to get away.
What's wrong?
I mean, I had to think something was going on after something like that, so I came to find you. There's a lot going on right now. Cove looked at you in confusion, his eyebrows dipping. What is it? Can you explain everything to me? You nodded softly before taking in a heavy breath and launching into the story. Cove sat quietly and listened attentively, nodding every now and then or taking in a sharp inhale. It took a long time for you to relay the details. Dozens of stars were pinpointed in the sky as the night wore on. Silence settled between you and as Cove sat quietly for a moment, contemplating everything he had said. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, drifting through the night towards you. Eclair?
I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry about what's happening with Elizabeth, your parents, your family, everything. He stopped suddenly, and you got the impression he was struggling to find more to say. You know, Elizabeth and I haven't ever been super close, but I don't think she'd want her family to break up or drift apart, even if she complains about it sometimes. He smiled at you a little, and you could tell he was trying to be comforting. And your moms definitely don't. It doesn't matter if you're not blood related, you're definitely family. I can see that, and I hope you can too. Thank you, Cove. His words made you feel better, and you knew it was true. You loved your family. Elizabeth cared about it too. She was just hurt. Hey. The sudden voice of your sister behind you made you jump. You saw her standing a little way away. She walked closer, and you didn't quite know what to do or what she was planning on saying.
So?
Would you mind going? I want to talk to just Eclair. You can come back. It's not going to be forever or anything. Cove seemed equal parts concerned and skeptical. Leaving now wasn't a concept that thrilled him. You nodded your head in agreement. If she wanted to talk to you in private, it was obviously about something important. You waited until the two of you were alone before fixing her with an inquisitive look. Elizabeth folded her arms, looking you over. Did Mom tell you about your parents too? I didn't want to know. Elizabeth nodded in understanding, her face solemn. Why did you want to talk to me? I want to see you, and you didn't even answer. Elizabeth raised an eyebrow at the news.
What?
I didn't hear anything. Shutting everything out with loud music was very typical of your sister. You didn't feel much less confused, though. Why did you stop doing that, then? She shook her head, as though the answer should be obvious. I was worried about you. I was the one who brought it up, but I made you deal with whatever was left when I was gone. She sighed, glancing upward for a moment before settling on you once more. I wanted to ask you what happened without everyone breathing down our necks. I'm not mad at you. She stuck her nose up a little at that, but her smile was soft. I'm okay, Elizabeth. It didn't upset me. How are you allowed to be that mature? The lightning spirits in her were quickly gone as she slipped back into a scowl. You have to be born in the U.S. to become a president. What? You had never heard of that dream of hers before. She noticed your bafflement and continued. I get I was never gonna be president, but it just feels weird, having stuff taken away, not even getting a chance at it. I don't like having to know that when I was born, I was gonna have a completely different life, so different I can't even think about what it looked like in my head. I could have spoken another language, lived away from everything I've ever seen here, had someone else as my sibling. And then my parents died and I was adopted, and the life I got became a totally new thing forever. I can't go back to what it was, even if I wanted to. A heaviness settled between you and the person who became your sister. I don't really understand. I can't see that other stuff as being my life. The one I have is what my life is, and everything else is only what didn't happen. Elizabeth watched you seriously. She was still trying to make sense of this to you and herself. I don't know why today was the day. Nothing came up to make me ask the question. It was just something I've had on my mind, in my head for a while. When it was just me and Mom's in the living room, I just kind of said it, finally, and there you go. She shifted from one foot to another, relaxing her stance just a bit. She also spoke more gently. Learning about them and what happened doesn't change how I feel about our family and Claire. She smirked, fixing you with sharp eyes. I'd already figured a long time ago that Moms weren't our biological parents. That wasn't news. It really doesn't change anything? Yeah. Nothing about the family I was first born in would have made me decide that this wasn't my family anymore. If you had hoped you'd be free of my big sisterly status, don't think you're so lucky. She bumped her shoulder against yours playfully, her lips tilted at the corners.
You'll always be my little sister.
I like that.
You'll always be my little sister.
You smiled softly at her. You jokingly groaned at the prospect. You'll always be my family, too. Chuckling, she seemed pleased with how the conversation had gone in the end. Ready to head back home? It's been a long day. You gave her a nod.
Come on.
You two, let's go. You walked home together in comfortable silence down the well-worn street. The familiarity of it all felt nice. When you stepped through the door, you found your moms quietly sitting together at the kitchen table. Their heads snapped up, and they got to their feet to meet you, Ma giving you a careful smile. We're so glad to see you. Sorry about walking away before. That's all right, sweetheart. We're just happy to have you here again. Ma then came over and wrapped her arms around you and Elizabeth, giving you a tight hug. It didn't take long for Mom to join in, putting her arms around the both of you.
Love you.
We really couldn't have asked for better kiddos. We love you. More than we could ever say. Moms. You smiled at their comfort. I love you too. It was a nice moment, and you enjoyed it for as long as you could. They both pulled back eventually and grinned at the two of you, and you knew that you all had each other, and you always would. Hey, I hope you're alright. Lee came up towards you, a soft smile plastered on her face. And are you okay, Elizabeth? Elizabeth rolled her eyes and huffed a breath, and you knew she wasn't used to showing her vulnerable side.
Fine.
I'm doing fine. Lee nodded, though you could tell she didn't quite believe her. Well, now, since we're all here, how about we do something together as a family? That sounds like an excellent idea. We should have some fun before the night's over. I love the sound of that. Yeah, okay. Why not? You hid the smile that threatened to tilt your lips, knowing that Elizabeth must have been in a good mood if she hadn't even teased Co for being part of it. And no matter what she could have said about it, you wanted him to be here. The two of you had practically grown up together over the past 5 years. Who's got a suggestion? It should be something we can do here in the house with everyone in the same room. We could just put on a movie. That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
It's good to me.
Me too.
Yeah. Happy to watch a movie. I'll cook up some popcorn. The rest of you can pick a movie. Your mom headed off to the kitchen and Ma turned to face the rest of you. What do we have in mind? Everyone else can decide. I'll watch anything. Anything but drama. We don't need any more of that today. There were some chuckles at her joke, and you thought about what you would prefer to watch. Sci-fi. Action movie. Comedy would be great. Let's do an action movie. I'm in the mood. No, wait. Yeah, I'm in the mood for an action movie. Cool. Perfect. With the basics settled, Ma took to sorting through the DVD collection. You didn't notice that Elizabeth was sidling up to you until she was right next to you, arm to arm. Since there's only so much room on the couch, I say it should go to Eclair and I. This is our day. Wait, I want to sit with you too. I'm small. You won't even notice I'm there. Elizabeth raised a skeptical eyebrow, not so sure about that. Ma stood back up with a DVD in her hand and a smirk on her face.
Please?
I want to sit with the cool kids too. Surely there's room for one more, right? It might be a tight fit, but we can make it work. You could tell that Ma was teasing, and Elizabeth rolled her eyes at where this was going. She had expected an easy victory. I bet you want to sit there too, huh, Cove? Ma tapped Cove on the shoulder with the DVD case. He laughed awkwardly at her teasing. He felt shy over being made the center of attention. It may have been what Elizabeth was after, but you would have preferred being left out of it. Mom came back with a big bowl of fresh popcorn, and you inhaled the smell of the hot, salty snack. What's the skinny? We all want to sit with Elizabeth and Eclair, but there's not enough room on the couch. Mom took that answer in stride and pursed her lips thoughtfully.
What a pickle.
That's definitely a problem. I suppose there's only one solution. Elizabeth and Leclaire will have to sit on the floor in front of the couch. That way there's a spot behind them and on the floor at their sides.
Yes.
Oh yes, that's fair.
Rude.
What? No, the whole point was us getting the couch to ourselves. Sorry, that's the cost of popularity. Elizabeth groaned and crossed her arms over her chest in annoyance. Fine, Eclair, you're with me in front. The rest of you can fend for yourselves. There was a mad dash as Mom and Lee raced for the couch behind you, and Elizabeth and Ma put the DVD in the player before joining them. Cove took a seat at your other side on the floor, giving you a small smile. Everyone soon quieted down, and the only sound to be heard were hands scooping up popcorn and munching it down as the movie began. In that moment, you couldn't have been more pleased to be a part of the family you had. So our next one is Mall. Lee's visit today turned out to be more involved than you expected. After overhearing where the Holden family was going, Lee insisted on seeing Mr. Holden's shop firsthand. An hour later, and Lee was busy looking at every item on display. Because Cove's dad offered supplies, lessons, and tours, his shop had all the scuba-related stuff you could imagine: fins, masks, suits, and snorkels. After circling around the shop, you finally stopped and looked at the whole room. It wasn't often that you tagged along to hang out at the shop. You preferred it that way. It meant there was always something new to look at, even if it was just a layout change. You were in good spirits. This was a pleasant surprise. Visiting the shop made for a fun afternoon. Just the other day, Cove was telling you about the new wetsuits, and now you got to check them out. Lee was still busy poking through the various wetsuits displayed, so you decided to see what Derek and Cove were doing. They were too absorbed in their conversation to notice you standing near them. Leaning against the counter, you were able to pick up the topic quickly.
Anyway.
My dad told me the new stuff is selling like crazy. Yeah, the material has this new blend with less neoprene. My dad says people are really interested in it. It brought a smile to your face hearing that the shop was doing well. You decided to keep listening. It was interesting just to watch them speak about what they knew. But really, there's just so much to think about with the business. It's crazy. No matter how much I come, I still don't think I get it. Cove hummed and nodded in agreement, causing a good-humored laugh from Derek. I thought you only liked the scuba diving part, not the job part. That's just the best part. I think about other things too.
Gotcha.
Cool, the business side. Running it, that's my favorite. Out of the corner of your eye, you caught movement and you realized that Lee was now standing next to you. When your dad's retired, you guys think you're gonna carry on the store? Both sons shrugged in unison.
Well,
There's tons of things I could do. My dad thinks so too. He doesn't want me to plan on working here forever. Cove's gaze fell to the floor. You could see the conflict flashing across his face.
I don't know.
I don't know. It's a lot, being the real boss of something and totally in charge. No matter what you both do, shop or no shop, you'll be amazing. Derek smiled in equal parts happiness and bashfulness. He bounced on his feet a bit. Thanks, Eclair. I'm happy you believe in us. Me too. Cove's parents left the back office and came over, catching your attention. Sorry, kids. It looks like it's going to be a long one. I know usually others hold the fort down, but I really need to stay here today. I know you just wanted a little visit. It'd be boring getting stuck all day because of me. Kira can take my car and go back to the neighborhood. Cove and Derek gave him an understanding look. Mr. Holden crossed his arms and flashed you all a big smile, trying to lift the mood. The one condition is that someone has to remember to come back for me later. You don't get to strand me here, no matter how funny that might be. Kira laughed and gave a thumbs up. Mr. Holden seemed satisfied with that. He moved on with the explanation. Derek, your dad also has his hands full today, so he doesn't have time to run you back home.
it's okay.
That's all right, sir. The title Sir got an awkward chuckle out of Cliff, which was cut short when Kira elbowed him teasingly.
What do you think?
You already said I could borrow your car. Why don't I take all the kids somewhere fun for the afternoon?
Absolutely.
That's fine with me. Just please come back eventually, sometime today, Kira. Poor Cliff. After multiple jokes about being left with no ride, you had to wonder if that actually happened in their past together. For you, my good sir, I swear, cross my heart. Happy with the promise, Cliff took out his black wallet and offered a $50 bill to Kira. Here, in case you need gas or anything else while you're out. Kira smiled knowingly and accepted the bill without hesitation.
Thank you.
Cove's dad stuck the wallet into his back pocket while he waved with the free hand. Okay, time for me to jump back into work. Have fun for me. Bye, Dad. Bye. Bye, sir. Bye, Mr. Holden. Goodbye, sirs and madams. He left the room with a wink and flare, disappearing into the employees' only area of the shop. When Mr. Holden was out of sight, Kira silently strolled over to the counter and carefully placed the $50 bill there. She turned back around and beamed a large smile at you and the others. Come on, gang. Let's see if this town has a mall.
Yeah!
Yes. Unable to contain her excitement, Lee actually jumped with joy while Cove and Derek just grinned. There wasn't a mall in your hometown, but Mr. Holden's store wasn't in Sunsetburg. It might be possible to find a mall out here. You felt okay about that. A trip to the mall had never failed you. You nodded, deciding that today was going to be all right. Let's go! She quickly herded the group out of the store and into the car.
Cove.
As the driver, I get to choose my partner in crime. Naturally, I bestow the position of shotgun to my baby. Her comment had both Derek and Lee snickering. Cove was for sure embarrassed over the phrasing and blatant favoritism, but he took the seat by his mom without complaint. You decided to stick up for Cove. You decided to jokingly complain with the special treatment. Yeah. You kept quiet. Silently, you watched Cove and his mom interact. It still felt odd at times to actually see her. I'll take the middle seat. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want a window seat. You two can have them. Are you cool with that? You thought it was odd that anyone would give up a window seat, but you knew Derek tried to be especially polite when he was a guest. You nodded.
Fantastic.
Good, sounds like we're all in agreement. Everyone squeezed into the car, buckling in, and Kira turned the radio on. She set it to the top 40s pop station. Quickly you recognized the song playing. It was a new one by an artist you were listening to a lot recently. It wasn't long until your group realized that they were lost. But after driving in enough circles, Kira's struggle paid off when she found a local mall. There were more cheers from Lee as Kira pulled into the parking lot. Once your group had made it inside, the first order of business on this trip was checking what this mall actually had. Where should we go? I think I see a makeup store up ahead. She rolled up on her tiptoes to get a better view. Meanwhile, Derek was eyeing the directory. There's a chocolate shop. Seriously, we have to go there. Yes, wait. And we need to find a decent jewelry shop. I need new hair ties and barrettes.
Nice.
We've also got to at least look for a game store. There's tons of things you can't get anywhere but a store that's just for video games. Hey, what are you thinking, Cove? I want to look at the fish in the pet store. You could have guessed that much. Anywhere else? He smiled with some bashfulness. The food court.
So...
What about you, Claire? Okay, pet store. Chocolate shop. Ninja shop, pet, and bookstore, and that's all really. That's certainly a list. Good thing we have all afternoon. Yeah! I have my own stops I want to make. Let's agree to regroup here at 7 p.m.
What?
Oh, you're not coming with us? We're all in the same building. You won't be as alone as you think. I'll only be a few minutes away at most. You're old enough to enjoy them all without me hovering. Okay. Be back here at 7 p.m. Toodaloo! Leaving Derek and Lee stunned by their newfound freedom, Kira walked off. When she was almost out of sight, Derek's face twisted in confusion. Wow, she's really gone. I can't believe she just did that. This is so cool. We get to do whatever we want. You felt unsure. Was it really okay? Is it me, or does it feel weird to be at the mall without a parent there? My moms wouldn't have done this. It's not just you. It'll be okay. We're here together.
Trust me.
Wow.
Trust me. Trust me.
And she's not gone for real. She'll be somewhere around. With the decision already made, Derek tried to pull together his earlier enthusiasm for the trip.
So...
Where are we going first? Time's a-wasting. Whatever's closest. Things are coming together, but you realize there might be a flaw in today's sudden plans. What's wrong, Claire? Did everybody bring money with them?
Yeah.
I did. I always have some on me when I come all the way out here. I don't know, 13-year-old doesn't always think ahead, but, you left all your money at home. The original plan was only visiting Mr. Holden's store. No, I didn't think I need it. Derek looked at you sympathetically.
I get
I
it.
can lend you some if you need it. Co smiled at you reassuringly.
It's okay.
You know, I don't mind getting you anything if you want it. Yeah, don't worry. I can get your tab. You can pay me back later. You'd let them know if you really needed it. I'll tell you if there's something I want to get. Thanks. Lee waved that right off. We're here to have fun, not worry about anything. How often do we get to go to the mall together? Never, basically. It's special.
Right.
Right, don't feel bad about it. How sweet. Now that everything was squared away, you explored the mall together as a group. There were many shops that you managed to venture into so far. You all even went into the pet store, leaving you with a pep in your step. This was better than you'd thought, and there was still so much to see. After having hit many of the top priority stores, you found yourself passing by a small booth. It was decorated in wind chimes of various sizes. You raised a hand up to one of the smaller ones. What sparked your attention next was Cove. You thought for sure he was going to stop at the booth by the way he looked at it, but he kept going. Do you want one? It wasn't until Lee asked that you realized that you had stopped in front of the booth without saying anything. Lee just continued to encourage you. You should get one. They had caught your attention, though it was because it might make a nice gift. You wondered if Lee was planning on becoming a one-gem salesperson since she kept pushing it. I have one like this at home, and it makes the prettiest sound. Can I borrow some money?
Totally!
Of course! Your gaze traveled over to the boys. They were paying you and Lee no mind as they continued along. Let me get one for myself and Cove. Can I get those too? Two? Why would you need two wind chimes? One is for Cove. A giggle escaped Lee as she dug her money out and paid for you. A large, mischievous smile spread across her face. The shopkeeper carefully wrapped your purchase up and handed it back to you in a bag. You accepted it and then raced off with Lee to catch up to the boys. For Cove, you had picked out a beautiful wind chime that... Okay, he likes dolphin. He likes the ocean, so obviously a dolphin charm. You had a feeling he'd appreciate that. After leaving another clothing store, one that Lee couldn't resist exploring, you and your friends found yourselves walking down the main hall of the mall again. It wasn't long until everyone you were with had their eyes on the smoothie kiosk ahead. Should we stop? Yeah. As you approached, your eyes were drawn to the dizzying list of smoothie combinations. A part of you wondered how long it would take to try them all. Hi there, do you need the rundown of how this works? Yes, please. Okay. First off, you pick up to 3 options of fruit or berries. Then I'll add the ice and the store's special smoothie base mix, and then you'll have your very own smoothie for $4. There's only one size. Cove leaned over the counter a bit. For several moments, he intently studied the plentiful fruit and berry options. I want to get a strawberry banana smoothie, with coconut too. Sounds good. Is anyone else getting something? Can I get one that's just all mango? Of course.
Thanks!
I'd like strawberries, blueberries, and raspberries for mine. Thanks. The shopkeeper looked at you now. Could I get... mango kiwi peach. At that, everyone started fishing their money out of their pockets. Your face was burning with embracement as you stared at your friends, hoping that they remembered your money situation. I can pay for you, Smoothie Eclair, okay? That was a relief for you to hear. I can do that too. I said it first. You'll have to be faster than that. Cove didn't seem to appreciate her joking tone and took it almost as a challenge. Then how much money did you bring? If it's less than what I have, I should be the one who pays.
What?
What? Why? Way to be a sore loser. Thank you. You, Lee, and Cove turned your heads to see Derek standing in front of the register. He bypassed everyone and paid for the entire order with a 20 and a smile on his face. The remaining change went into the tip jar. He noticed the audience he now had and cocked an eyebrow. What? I could have paid. Thanks. This is why I always have money on me. To take care of things. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
You waited over at the other side of the booth where the drinks were put when they were done. Derek bounced on his feet, excited for his to be ready.
Aw.
This is gonna be good. Lee chimed in with her own enthusiasm. Everybody says their smoothie-based stuff can make any drink great. Cove, while quieter, looked just as eager for his smoothie. Luckily, there hadn't been anyone else before you, so it wasn't a long wait. Your group collected the fresh drinks as they were placed on the counter. Straws were placed through the opening at the top of the cup, and the first tentative sips were had. Derek sighed in satisfaction after his taste. Mango is too delicious. Mine is super good, too. Cove nodded and hummed in agreement. His straw was still in his mouth. You were really happy with yours. I'm sorry, mango, kiwi, peach sounds really good right now. Peach. This is perfect. Cool, we all made excellent choices today. Yeah. This is always fun. This is always fun. Hey Lee, can I taste what you got? As long as you let me try yours too. Deal. You and Lee swapped cups and took several sips before swapping back. The berry blend tasted very strong. I like yours, but I'm really, really happy I got this. Thanks, Lee.
You're welcome.
I'm always there to help. Oh, you wanted to ask someone else to try their smoothie. Can I have a sip of yours, Derek? You can. He held his cup out for you to take it, but instead it was easier to just lean forward and take a sip from his straw. He blushed slightly at the gesture. That's good mango, thanks. You're welcome. Ask Coke. Coke, could I have a drink of yours? I'm leeching off everybody today. Not for 1 second since getting it had his lips been apart from the straw, but he did seem to be considering your request. You jokingly begged him. Cove, I really need it, please. Cove smiled softly, and finally he offered the cup to you. You held the cup in both hands and took a sip. Thanks.
You're welcome.
It was kind of a sacrifice, you know. This is really good. Taking his drink back, Cove's mouth seemed to grow bigger. His teasing tone made you grin. It is. As your group continued to wander the mall, you came to an area in the path that was wider. In the center of the opening was a collection of quarter-operated ride-on machines. Derek stopped as soon as he saw them, smiling ear to ear. I want to ride! I think we might be too big.
No way.
We're not that old yet. He eagerly headed over to the machines, wanting to get a better look. Lee went along with it, smiling. You stayed quiet about it. Silently, you decided to wait and see how the scene unfolded in front of you. Reconvening around Derek, you watched as he was focused on the various bright-colored rides. Most were designed to look like real vehicles, but there were also some horse-shaped ones. One of them could even seat 2 people. I call it a helicopter. Why?
Cool.
It's the coolest, and I think it will move the most. He started digging in his pockets, pulling out whatever money he had left. Wait, is everything okay? I need 4 quarters, right? Yeah. I only have 2. There was to be more between all of us. Hold on. Pockets, wallets, and purses were checked over. Derek still had 2. Cove had only 1. Lee ended up with the most at 3. You didn't have any.
Don't worry about it.
You can have mine. Thanks, but you don't have to. It's not enough for me, and even if it was, it'd be dumb to ride while you had to watch. Cove shrugged. He had tried, failed, and looked unsure of what to do next. Couldn't we exchange dollar bills for more quarters at a store? Derek slapped a hand to his cheek, eyes wide.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that'll work. Let's do it. The group scattered to various shops around. When you shortly reconvened at the rides, everyone had more than enough quarters. Lee got an extra set for you and wouldn't take no for an answer when she offered it.
Please.
Claire, are you going to join us on this little kid ride? Please. You sighed, admitting defeat. I'll do it. Yay! There were enough machines that everyone claimed one for themselves. Derek got his coveted helicopter. Lee was happily on a horse. Cove waited to choose last. It seemed he didn't want to take a ride someone else wanted when he cared so little about it. You picked... I don't know, let's go on a motorcycle. That was definitely the coolest ride around. Cove took one of the free single-seater cars once you had gotten set. Looks were exchanged across the way and you each popped the coin at the same time. The little ride started to life. As the machines began moving up and down and side to side, Lee and Derek couldn't contain their laughter. Derek started waving from the window of the helicopter and Lee reached out to see if she could touch anyone as their machine jolted close for hers. Cove, on the other hand, just gripped the side of the car. He was struggling to remain in the seat, looking very uncomfortable. You stretched over to grab Lee's hand. Grinning, you leaned forward and reached as far as you could. For a moment, a shot of panic went through you as you thought you were about to stumble off the ride, but you hung on with your free hand and balanced yourself. Be careful! I'm trying. Your rides were synced and up in movement. Almost there, your efforts were rewarded when you caught hold of her hand. We did it! Yeah! It was a battle to keep together as the rides went backwards. The two of you kept almost being accidentally pulled off your seat by the other, but that made it more fun. Soon all rides came to a stop and the group dismounted. Derek looked absolutely pleased at the conclusion of this stop. Then you noticed something out of the corner of your eye. You tilted your head to look directly at it, and you burst into laughter. What's funny? You turned back to your group and nodded in the direction of where you were looking. Isn't that one of those machines that takes dollars and gives quarters back, the kind to help people who don't have quarters already? Everyone's head moved that way, and you saw that you were right. Derek chuckled awkwardly. That's exactly what that is. We're kind of dumb. We have to be to miss this whole time. Come on, let's just put this behind us. There's still places open. We haven't been everywhere yet. Here, here. You moved along from one stop towards your next, still jovial from the experience. Shortly into your walk, Lee ran over to a nearby trash can and tossed her smoothie cup. Derek went after her and threw his cup away. You followed suit and got rid of your empty cup too. Cove was the last to throw his cup away. He took one final sip, making sure he got every last drop. The clock inched closer to 7 p.m. as you all made your way back to the directory. It was hard to believe how fast the day went by.
So,
Where do you think your mom ended up today? We didn't see her anywhere. I don't know. She's just like that. Ooh, it's a mystery. Despite having vanished for the entire trip so far, when 7 p.m. hit, you spotted Kira coming right over, waving cheerily. As soon as she was close enough, she pinched Cove's cheek. Hey, baby and friends. Hi, Mom. He pushed her hand back with one hand and rubbed his cheek with the other. Did you have a good day, gang? Yeah, today was awesome. We did so much. It was fun. You thought there were ways it could have been worse. It was okay. You tried to flash a small smile to smooth things over because today had some fun moments, but you felt it could have been better. You were relieved that it was time to go. I want to hear all about it during the ride back. She clapped her hands together once, making sure she had everyone's undivided attention. Speaking of that, we better head out. Cliff must be missing us, and you've got to be starving. It's dinner time, and you haven't eaten it yet. Yeah. Everyone followed her lead and started walking out the door to the parking lot. Something about what Kira said felt off to you. There were tons of places to eat. It's a mall. You could have had dinner. You wondered if it was just a good guess, but you could feel your eyebrows raise when it dawned on you. She might have been keeping an eye on you after all. That was actually pretty slick. If she hadn't made that comment, you never would have known. You found it hard not to be impressed. Not once could you recall even catching a glimpse of her hanging around, though, now that you think about it, not seeing her ever was suspicious in and of itself. Shaking off those thoughts, you caught up with the others. Keeping the same seating arrangements as earlier, you all piled into the car and started heading back to the store. The drive went by without any problems, as it was filled with chatter about the various things everyone saw around the mall. Soon enough, you'd arrived at your destination. It was a much faster trip, considering this time Kira knew where she was going. Hearing the light jingle of bells from the front door being opened, Cliff poked his head out from the back. He lit up at seeing who was there. Hey, sport, did everyone have an adventure? Hi, Dad. We had a blast. Yes! We found the mall. The mall? Wish I could have joined. He deflated in an exaggerated way. His shoulders sloped. Kira put a hand on his arm and smiled. There'll be other times. Are you set here? Almost. Mr. Holden sighed for real. He then pulled himself together, standing up straight.
Do you mind?
I need just a little more time to finish up. Will you be alright killing time for a bit longer? It's okay. Yes, sir. No problem, Mr. Holden.
Sure.
We can have fun here. Excellent. What a great group of kids. He gave an approving thumbs up and Kira nodded along. I'll give you a hand. I remember the ropes. Why, thank you. They walked side by side to the back room before he was out of sight. Cliff stopped and looked over his shoulder. If you leave the shop, don't go far. It's getting late. And then the parents were gone again. Let's go to the docks. They're right down the way. Yeah. Oh, I saw those on the way here and really wanted to check it out. Are you coming, Claire? All right. With a smile, Cove showed the way. Between the warm summer air and the smell of the ocean, you couldn't ask for a better night. Thanks for letting me come. Me too.
right?
Right, I'm happy we did this. Today was great. Cove, your mom and dad are really cool. Really? Totally. Cove looked at Lee oddly. He ran a hand through his hair, and then his puzzled expression cracked with a chuckle.
Yes.
I guess sometimes they are. You continued walking. Ever so often, you would look up at the sky and see several stars poking up between the clouds. At one point, you noticed that Cove stopped while Lee and Derek kept going on ahead, busily chatting. Initially, you wondered if something was wrong, but you quickly noticed that he still looked to be in good spirits. You decided to hang back with Cove. He gave you a quick, acknowledging look when you stopped at his side. You could taste the sea salt as you took a deep breath of the ocean air. Silently, you and Cove watched the ocean for a little while. There was something about the waves that you always found soothing. You couldn't think of a better way to end a busy day. And then it hit you. The wind chime! This was the perfect moment. Quickly, you dug the wrapped package out of your bag. Hey, Cove? He barely replied. Instead, his focus was mostly on lazily watching the sea. The paper wrapping crinkled as you pushed the package forward, trying to make him realize. He finally caught sight of it, and his eyebrows raised up high. Gingerly, Cove accepted the gift. Just seeing the present brought a smile to Cove's face. He carefully opened it, and his whole body brightened as he recognized the chime.
Oh my god.
Oh my gosh, Eclair, you're so... You explained that Cove had given you gifts, and he wanted to give him something in return. I really thought you were going to buy it. When you didn't, I couldn't resist. Cove's smile seemed to grow even bigger. He looked sincerely happy. You were way too nice to me. I can't even believe it. He started getting shy over his giddiness and put a hand up over his mouth. He was so happy that buying the wind chime was the right call. I'm gonna find the best place to hang this. Thanks, Eclair. You're welcome. Let me know where you end up putting it. It'd be helpful to know. You took your wrapped up wind chime out of your bag and held it up, drawing a chuckle from him. Okay, we'll match that way. Yeah. Not much time later, Derek's chipper voice caught your attention. You and Cove both turned your gaze down the pier. What are you doing there, slowpokes? Get over here.
Hey!
Hey, come on. You looked at Cove the same time he looked at you. You grinned and nodded your head in the direction of your friends. He gave you a small smile in return. Your first steps echoed against the wooden planks of the dock and into the night as you ran to catch up. There's the mall. So, one after mall is the escapade. You looked up, noticing the sun was finally setting. You had been trying to delay the end of the day for as long as possible. The evening breeze tickled your nose as you sat on your front porch, munching on fresh watermelon slices. You thought watermelon was just okay. You were debating on whether or not you should eat another slice. It was an alright sweet snack, but you were still content from dinner. You turned to look at Cove. You both had been sitting in comfortable silence for a while now. He sat next to you on the steps of your house. He was happily absorbed in his thoughts and his own slice of watermelon. Chuckling, you watched as his face twisted in discomfort. He had to stop chewing to spit a seed into the bush. The two of you had made a little habit of periodically doing that while you had been snacking. This time you decided to make it a topic of a conversation. I hate how it feels to swallow them, those hard black seeds. Yeah, I'm not gonna do that. You both went back to eating in comfortable silence, still occasionally spitting unwanted seeds into the bushes. Gonna have watermelons in those bushes, just sprouting up one day. I wonder if I'll have another slice after this one. That one is your third already. Is that bad? It tastes really good. He sighed affectionately. If another slice is gonna make you happy, it will. Go ahead, I'm not gonna stop you. Cove picked up another slice. He smiled at you, delighted. A little while later, Cove flinched, making a confused sound. He slowly put his current slice down on the plate next to him. Are you okay? Yeah. He stood up, his head tilted back to look at the sky. His feet took him to the middle of the street. Did you notice anything? What do you mean? I thought I felt a raindrop. The sun's still out. You put down your watermelon slice and hopped off of your front steps. Immediately, you felt a tap of water on the crown of your head, making you yelp. You're right! Cove was still staring up at the sky, and you watched as he began blinking more rapidly. When he finally turned in your direction, his face was bemused. It's a sun shower! It seemed crazy, but soon you couldn't avoid the drops that began increasing into a light shower. Booming with laughter, Cove kicked off his shoes towards his front door and reveled in the moment. You were excited. You closed your eyes and threw your head back, letting the rain shower over you. The cool drops felt so right after the warmth of the day. Feeling energized, you ran over to Cove and laughed at how soaked he already was. Not that he cared, because he was busy spinning in the middle of the street. You clapped and bounced up on your heels. Just as suddenly as the sprinkling started, it stopped and left you dripping with the smell of wet asphalt and soil tickling your nose. Cove caught your eye, running a hand through his wet hair. Combing it back, he frowned. It's over. The drops of rain clinging to his face almost could have been mistaken for tears. He sounded that disappointed. Well, it was fun. Yeah, it's so cool that it happened. You then looked over at your door and sighed. You knew Ma wasn't going to be happy to see you trailing water into the house. Cove rubbed his arm awkwardly. He must have been thinking the same thing, because he watched you sympathetically.
It's okay.
You can dry off at my house if you want. My parents won't mind. I don't want to cause trouble. You won't, really. My parents make bigger messes than that all the time. It's okay. Then can I at least sit out here with you until you can go inside? Nah, you don't have to do that. I'll go with you. Yeah? Okay. His whole demeanor brightened. You figured he must have felt relieved to help you avoid getting in any trouble. Cove led you inside and you stayed close to him. We have a ton of spare towels. You just gotta dig them out of the hall closet. What should I do? Just hang out in the living room. Okay. And maybe don't sit on the couch. You answered him with a slight smile. Yeah, good idea. With that, Cove disappeared and returned in no time, towels in hand. Here. Thanks. You accepted one and began to pat yourself down. A sudden call caught both of your attentions. I thought I heard voices. Cove's mom strolled into the living room with a curious grin.
Huh?
What happened here? You're both wet. There was a sun shower. Yeah, cool. Cove smiled back at his parent. We came inside to dry off. My moms don't want me going into my house when I'm wet.
Right.
So I told Claire to come back here. That was very sweet of you, baby. She ruffled Cove's wet hair and laughed at the drops of water that shook off. Then a light came to Kira's eyes.
What do you think?
I have an idea. Why don't we go for a drive? It has to be standing around the house, and you'll air dry in no time. Cove only offered a shrug and bent smile to his mom. He looked at you for a real answer. You weren't sure at all about her suggestion. You crossed your arms and chewed at the bottom lip, thinking about it. It'll be fine, I promise. Cross my heart. Okay. Kira pulled out her cell phone from her pocket to call your mom. They had swapped numbers earlier in the
See you
summer.
soon.
Head on out to the garage. I'll meet you there in just a minute.
Sorry.
Sorry, my mom can be so pushy. She gets some idea in her head, and that's what she does. That's okay. Thanks for letting me come. I didn't do anything. That wasn't true at all, but you let him get away with that. Come on. Cove led you to the car, and Kira wasn't too far behind. Okay, into the back, you two. Once the three of you were situated inside, Kira started it and drove out of the residential area. When she hit the main road, the car sped up and she rolled back windows down all the way. Hey! Cove started laughing as he kept trying in vain to keep his hair from flying into his eyes too much. Meanwhile, you closed your eyes as the wind whipped against your wet clothes. I said this drive was going to be good for getting air dried. Yeah, but I didn't agree to this much air. Cove tried pressing the window button, but nothing happened. His eyebrows furrowed in frustration. You disabled the back? Sorry, can't hear you. Smiling deviously, Kira turned on the radio and turned it up to be heard over the wind. Ah. don't know if Eclair would be a complete fan of this. You were not a fan of this stunt. You tried pressing the window button on your side and got the same frustrating result. Come on, Mom, sorry, Eclair. You nodded, giving Cove a small smile, hoping he understood you didn't blame him for this. He smiled back with an understanding look. Papers! And then something struck the side of your leg. Several papers were freed from under the car seats and were blown about. Oh, they can't go out the windows. Cove began to haphazardly reach around the space to try and get it all back under wraps. Amused, you helped. Mom, close the windows! Kira offered no response other than a chuckle. She just kept driving. Cove snatched several of the papers out of the air, and you caught others, preventing most of them from flying out of the window on your side. You showed Cove your collection while grinning widely. You figured if they were sitting out in the back of the car, they couldn't be important enough to get upset over, but Cove continued looking annoyed. Your smile started to slip, and at that, his expression softened. Thanks for helping. The sun set completely, and at that, Kira rolled up the windows. Cove let out a big sigh and released the random bits of paper he had in his fists. Relieved, Cove relaxed the tension in his shoulders. You watched as he ran a hand through his wind-blown hair. You didn't know what was happening anymore. After all of that, you wondered what was going to come next, biting your bottom lip. Cove watched you with interest until his focus was taken by a new comment from his mom. I bet you're not feeling damp anymore. No, but now I feel tricked. Cove continued to not give his mom antic a pass, but you spotted Kira looking at you both a moment in the rearview mirror, smiling. You stayed quiet. You shook her head and looked out the window. Kira continued driving. The radio volume was adjusted for the closed windows and everyone was sitting more comfortably. Kira lowered the sound ever more after pulling into a red light. She took the chance to turn around. You caught her coy smirk.
So?
Does anyone know what we drove past during the dry cycle? I'm not sure I want to. A movie theater! Okay, most places have one somewhere. It isn't that late, you know. We can probably still catch a show.
What?
Really, Mom? You don't even know what'd be playing.
Come on.
That's what makes it fun. I'm not sure about that. Is it really a good idea? Don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating impulsive behavior every day, but it's important to seize the moment when you can. We might never have another night like this. And don't worry, Eclair. I said I'd watch over you for the night, not just 10 minutes or so. I'll put your parents in the loop about hitting the movies as soon as we get there.
That's...
I didn't bring any shoes. I'm not wearing any either. How are we gonna go inside barefoot? I don't know.
It's all right.
We'll sneak through quick. No one will notice. You can do it. Just this once. You shared a look with Cove. It was comforting that at least you were on this wild ride together. Kira drove into the theater parking lot and shut the engine off. With the unbuckling of her seatbelt, she ushered you and Cove out. Despite being hesitant to leave, once outside, Cove burst into a sprint towards the cinema. You were right along with him. The tarmac was still wet from before and cold to stand on with bare feet. Inside, you noticed there were no lines. All the current shows had already started. Kira paid that no mind and strode up toward the counter with some words of encouragement. A third of the running time is ads these days. We haven't missed anything. I mean, that's kind of true. Meanwhile, Cove stood next to you awkwardly. He shifted from one foot to another and constantly kept looking around. His shady behavior would have made him much more likely to get caught than standing still would have, if there were people around to really notice. But the more anxiously he behaved, the more it rubbed off on you. You fidgeted in place. No, you kept quiet. Biting the inside of your cheek, you kept your eyes focused on the ticket counter. Eliciting a sigh of relief out of you, Kira returned with the tickets in hand. She quickly herded you and Cove towards the showing room. I'm so sorry for the little hiccup, but hold on. We've almost made it home free. Once we sit down, it'll be smooth sailing. The lights were already off in the showing room, but the movie hadn't started yet. The upcoming movie trailers were still playing. Keeping her volume in a hushed tone, Kira couldn't help but burst with excitement over your luck. You followed her down the walkway until she spotted open seats in the middle-ish area of the theater. Kira pointed at the seats, looking over her shoulder at you and Cove, waiting for input. Cove nodded and you decided to give her a thumbs up and she led the way. When you reached your seats, Kira sighed contentedly. Cove gave a sigh of his own and lifted his feet to sit cross-legged instead of keeping them down on the floor. He then leaned over and whispered to you.
So,
Do you have any idea what the movie is? No, I didn't hear the name or anything when your mom bought the tickets. Oh boy. After a couple more previews, the main event began. It dawned on you quickly that it was a horror film, one about a group of students being hunted by dangerous ghosts. You became nervous. You struggled with frightening films. It was one thing to go see a movie you knew nothing about, but a horror movie, that was an entirely different story, and it was eating at you that you had no idea what kind of scary you should be bracing for. Glancing over at Cove, you noticed that he looked less than thrilled with the movie. He bit down on his bottom lip and stared at the screen with trembling eyes. Cove had never been a fan of ghosts or intentionally frightening things. That was something you learned about him early on. You grabbed hold of his hand. Your fingers wrapped tightly around his, and he jumped slightly at the unexpected touch. But his expression softened when he peeked at you out of the corner of his eyes. He watched you with an unspoken question written all over his face. Will you be okay? Oh, he's so sweet. You shook your head no. His face grew firm and his mouth something you couldn't make out. Then he did something you could understand. He got up from his seat. Cove gestured for you to do the same and you obliged. You both began to shuffle down the aisle. At some point, Kira must have realized what was happening as well, because in only a couple of minutes, the three of you were standing outside again. Mother and son looked at you apologetically. It made you uncomfortable, but Cove spoke out to ease the atmosphere. This was a bad idea.
Come on.
I think you're on the money, baby boy. Movie making is a lost art anyway. Let's hit the road. That was good with you. You'd been scared and worried sitting in that theater, but in the end, Cove backed you up and you didn't have to go through it. You hugged him. You were so glad you could count on him to be there. It wasn't possible to stop yourself from throwing your arms around him. He returned the embrace carefully. You stood together in the parking lot like that for a brief moment. I really didn't want to see it. I know. It's okay. Cove gave you a reassuring smile, and that was that. Both you and Cove took the same seats in the back of the car again. Even though it was late, Kira was trying to keep things light. We can safely say that Stop was a bust. I'm really sorry, Claire. I should have asked if there were any off-limits genres. I think I have some making up to do. Who wants dessert, or just some regular food? What?
What?
You were surprised when you realized Kira wasn't on the way home, but turning to a drive-thru burger restaurant. You nodded. That's the spirit. Get whatever you want. Oh, gosh. Spicy chicken sandwich with mozzarella sticks and a milkshake. Is that alright?
Of course.
It's A-okay. Kira pulled up to the window and ordered what you asked for first. She then decided to order one of everything on the value menu. Whoa, what are you gonna do with all of that? Eat it?
Really?
The whole menu? That's right, there are only maybe 10 things on it, and there's about $1 each. I can swing it, and besides, whatever we don't finish, I'm gonna feed to your dad. He'll be in heaven. Cove sighed affectionately at his mother's antics. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're quite welcome. A few minutes later, Kira exchanged her money for multiple bags of food, which she quickly tossed to you both in the back seat. She then drove off into the night. Can you pass me something? What should I grab? Surprise me. You chose one of the wrap sandwiches and handed it to her. You had no idea if it was a burger or something else.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Accepting that this was what was happening, Cove shrugged and started pulling food out of the bags for himself. Cove ended up with some onion rings and he happily munched on them. You made sure to grab something you liked. Kyra's crazy ride just kept going. You had to wonder if this night would ever end. The adventure continued and you were so preoccupied in the back that you almost didn't realize the car had stopped. Kira turned to look over her shoulder. Okay, party people, it seems we've reached the end of the road. Confused, you checked out the window and saw nothing except empty road ahead, and then you noticed it. The now leaving sign. Kira took you through the entire town. What are we doing here? Kira turned the car around and parked it along the side of the road. I think you both could use a break to stretch your legs, and I doubt anyone is going to come through here at this time of night. Besides, I need to make a call, so go on. Cove shook his head and got out of the car without a fight. You followed Cove. You got out and caught up to Cove. He was busy looking at the stars and stretching his arms while he strolled around. You just felt tired. You followed aimlessly. It was late and you were starting to feel exhausted. Sleepy? Yeah. Your words came out in a big yawn. Looking sympathetic, Cove smiled at you. Shortly after, you noticed Cove's expression changed. His eyebrows furrowed, and it seemed like he was thinking hard about what he wanted to say next.
So sorry.
Hey Claire, I'm really sorry for my mom being crazy night. She isn't always like this. Seriously. You let him continue without interruption. I think she feels like she has to get out there and do things with me while she can, and she wants to make the time memorable. This visit has been really different than the others, and it didn't start off good. Thinking about how Kira's trip began this summer, and you could understand why Cove was thinking along those lines. She probably wanted all the trouble to be worth it in the end. She's giving you a taste of your own medicine. What? You always do whatever you want, no matter what anyone else is thinking. Now your mom's putting you through that. Cove took a second to mull over that assessment before cracking a smile. That's not totally wrong. It's completely right. His smile grew a bit more. It went silently between you both, so you jumped when you heard the sound of a car door closing. Cove, Eclair! You turned to see Kira by the driver's side waving. The sight brought a smile to Cove's face, and she quickly made her way over to where you both were standing. Thanks for waiting. I didn't mind.
My baby.
How did I end up with such a polite boy? She ruffled his hair and Cove lowered his head, accepting the compliment. You thought about how interesting it was to see how Cove interacted with his mom. And then the memory hit you. That first summer Cove ran away to this very spot, trying to find his way back to his mom. And now here they were, together. You kept that thought to yourself. Anyways, it's kind of cool to be here, right on the edge of town. Exactly, we're standing on a precipice. I think so too. I knew you'd get it. It's good to appreciate these times and places. Kira let out a big breath of air. We should probably call it a night, huh? Let's go. I can't wait to collapse in bed. Kara shyly smiled and gestured to the car. Quietly, you all made your way back to it. Cove naturally followed you, taking the seat nearby in the back, with a collection of fast food bags still strewn about. You rested your head in the seat as the car roared to life. As you did, Cove leaned in close to whisper.
Hey.
I can talk to your moms if they do get mad about tonight for some reason. It was my mom's idea. You didn't have a choice. This was worth it, even if they get mad. Your mouth pulled into a biggest grin, getting a laugh out of Cove. If you say so. Cove smiled bashfully at you, but said nothing else. The drive home was smooth and uneventful. The radio was off completely, and you felt your eyelids getting heavy. You were too tired to keep your head up, and it felt quite comfortable there. Cove didn't have any issue there. He leaned into it. You must have been exhausted too. You were happy to stay close like that. It was warm and comfortable. When you opened your eyes, you expected to still be in the car, not your bedroom. It was somehow already morning, and you couldn't remember how you ended up here. Sitting up in bed, you thought about how last night was quiet, an experience. It almost felt like a dream more than a real event, but it definitely happened, and you were ready to put it in the past. Alright, and our last one is birthday. I like this one. I like this one a lot. So let's go. It was a pleasant afternoon. The sun shone brightly and the breeze tagged lightly at the balloons strung around the park. You and Cove had just been dropped off at Miranda Eckhart's birthday party. You didn't really know Miranda. Last year was the first time you had class with her, and everyone at school knew her as quiet. The shy girl stuck to her own friend group like glue. It had been a surprise that she was having such a big party. You looked around the expansive park, a spacious recreation center in the next town over, and noticed a bouncy castle. Miranda had a bit of a reputation for not caring if she acted mature, like other teens sometimes did. It made a certain amount of sense that her party would match that. You thought Miranda was sweet. You had always gotten the vibe that she was nice, and inviting you to her party proved it. You liked that she wasn't obsessed with proving she was grown up. Maybe hanging out today would be fun. You hadn't had a choice in coming here today. Your moms insisted on it after you got the invitation, as did Co's mom and dad. So both you and he were driven over to the next town with presents in tow. All the parents had been pretty firm about going to a birthday if you'd been invited. I was happy to be here. You couldn't wait for the party to get started. There were so many things at birthday parties, and you were glad Miranda had wanted you to come. Cove made a small noise which caught your attention. He looked around, scanning the area. He fidgeted with his gift in hand. Any idea what we're supposed to do with these? You looked at your own present and then towards the seating area. There was a table filled with snacks and drinks, supplies for various party games. Past all that, you spotted one table in the back that seemed to have a truckload of gifts. He pointed it out to Cove. Presents over there. We probably should drop off our stuff. Cove nodded with a smile and turned to where you gestured. He saw it too. Cool. You and Cove began to walk over to the present table, flattening the well-trimmed grass beneath your feet. You walked past groups of people, classmates in semicircles, broken up into the usual friend groups, chatted away. You, or maybe Cove, received the occasional greeting or friendly nod. However, as you passed by even more people that you had never seen before, you became aware there were more strangers here than not. It was more crowded than you expected. Miranda Eckert, the quiet girl, was hosting the most populated birthday party you had been to in a long time. You looked at the new faces and thought you saw something of Miranda in them. Cousins, nieces, or nephews, maybe? Parties could be a big deal in her family. Both of you reached the table. You set your gift down in an empty space, brushing some confetti aside, and Cove placed his gently next to it. He looked at the present thoughtfully. Hey, what did you get her? Before you had a chance to answer, Cove opened his mouth again and tapped his gift. I found this sparkly backpack. I figured she could use it for school or a trip or something. Your moms had taken you out shopping the other day. You'd searched through the store and ultimately... You picked out a stuffed animal. The wide eyes of the otter plush had called to you. You weren't sure what in its face made you think of Miranda, but it seemed appropriate. Your moms had agreed that it was a fine present, and Ma helped you wrap it. You described it to Cove briefly, and he had no objections. Not a bad idea. He brushed his hand against the side of his pants. I really hope Miranda likes her gifts, but I think we both did good. With that, he gave you a sunny grin. You touched the gift one more time, and then stepped away. Without the direction of needing to put stuff away, the two of you weren't sure what to do next. You felt a little awkward, and Cove shrunk in on himself as he looked around. There were more guests heading to the present table, so you turned away and wandered over to a nearby tree where you wouldn't be in the way. From there, you both inspected the area and planned the next step. You were glad that Cove had been invited too. At least you had his company in this unfamiliar place. You watched him, and he gave you a nervous grin. It reassured you a little, and you smiled back. What next? Cove did not appreciate being put on the spot. He was just as unsure as you were. Birthday party stuff? It didn't seem to be time for cake, with people still arriving. Nothing else seemed to be organizing yet either. He noticed that himself and tried again. We could find Miranda. That was an idea. It made sense to greet the birthday girl. Okay, we could say hello. Wish her happy birthday. Ask her what she wants people to do.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. At that point, it was decided. The Miranda hunt had begun. You wandered around. Anytime you saw someone with Miranda's hair color, you got a little closer, but more than once it turned out not to actually be her. Hey, look! Finally, he pointed over to the real Miranda. She smiled slightly when you both approached her, but ducked her head. She seemed a little overwhelmed with being the center of attention today. Hi, Cove. Hiya, Claire. Happy birthday! Happy birthday.
Thanks.
Thanks.
I'm really glad you could come. Thanks. I'm really glad you could come.
Ah, she's sweet. You all stood awkwardly. Miranda did seem genuinely happy, but there was still a distance between you. This is a great looking party. Thank you. Is there something we need to do, or should we just hang out?
Oh, well, you can talk to people if you want. There are games that are gonna start soon.
And the bounce house should open later if you feel like jumping. Then after that, it's cake and presents time. We'll have ice cream too. After that, it's when people will start going home. I hope that's okay with you guys. Cove nodded. He seemed a little more confident about the situation now. Thank you for telling us. You mutually struggled to keep eye contact. She still wasn't completely comfortable in the situation, and it was hard for you too. Miranda waited there, and you became hyper-aware of the silence forming. You heard a shout for Randy, and Miranda brightened up. A total 180 with how stiff she had been with you.
I gotta talk to some more people. Bye.
The birthday girl ran off to her friend, leaving you and Cove with at least a little more idea of what to expect. You both glanced at each other wordlessly. All that was left now was finding something to fill time until the activities began. Cove followed you to the edge of the party. He pointed out a bench near a tree, and you both sat down. It was far enough away from the crowd that it was peaceful as long as you blocked out the sound of kids shrieking. Suddenly, a loud voice boomed over the crowd. The constant buzz of conversation dropped as one of the adults, maybe Miranda's dad, asked the kids to gather around because it was game time. I wonder what's gonna happen. He made a joke about something that wasn't going to happen. We're gonna play high-stakes poker. It's obvious. Obvious, huh? Look at this crowd. Most of the guests were teenagers around your age, but there were also quite a few adults and some younger kids. Cove nodded sagely at the group of little kids. Yeah, these are high rollers. The adult announced that the children under 10 had their first turn on the bouncy house. For everyone else, it was time to play pin the tail on the donkey. Cove raised his eyebrows. He was surprised for sure. You thought it was kind of silly. It was such a kid's game. The fact that this was planned for a party full of teens was a little crazy. You reluctantly joined the line since that was what you were supposed to do, and you didn't feel like arguing. The donkey in question was a cartoony poster with big eyes that looked more like ping pong balls. It was positioned a few feet above the ground on a tree trunk. The teen who arrived first was blindfolded and then spun around. He was nudged to the sign and away from the other kids so he wouldn't stick someone with the tail instead. Unfortunately for him, he placed the tail on the donkey's head, like some kind of bizarre earring. He wouldn't be winning that far from the target. His next opponent did far better by landing on the donkey's back. The spectators clapped politely and the line moved up. More teens tried their hand at it. Some got closer than others, but no one had gotten it perfect yet. Soon it was Cove's turn. He was blindfolded and spun just like the others. At this point, it was a close match and everyone was watching with bated breath. Cove approached the donkey and stuck the tail on without any hesitation. Cove stood back and removed his blindfold, cheering when he saw how close he was. He turned his head over his shoulder and grinned at you. Your turn. You took your turn. With the blindfold on, the bright part became utterly dark as you were spun around. The sounds around you seemed to get louder. At least you could tell the direction of the bounce house from the shrieks of the younger children. You stopped spinning and stepped forward. Tail in hand, it was time to give it a stab. Going to... I'm short. You placed it to the left. You pressed the tail into the target and stepped back. You took your blindfold off to check the results. There was some more clapping from the audience. The tail wasn't too far off. Behind you there was a particularly enthusiastic... Oh, and a few people mentioned how close you got. You smiled and looked back at Cove. He seemed amused. His tail wasn't off by much either, and you couldn't tell which of you was winning. They were just too nearby each other. A few more kids took their turn. One girl managed to somehow pin the tail on the opposite side of the tree. You were pretty sure it had been on purpose. With the line empty, the game was finally over. The adult running thing started to inspect the donkey. At this point, the sign was more tails than donkey. In the end, Cove was announced the winner with lots of smiles and applause. He grinned and seemed pretty proud of himself. He was handed a fistful of candy from the man in charge. Cove needed both of his hands to accept it all. Thanks! He took the candy into his pocket. It filled more than one. He congratulated Cove. You did really good. Thanks. I feel kind of sorry for the donkey, though. You both looked at the multi-tailed monstrosity and winced as you pictured how that would be in a real-life creature. You didn't ask. You can have his candy. It was his and you didn't need any. There would be other treats later. An older teen walked up, tall enough to tower over you and Cove. You felt a little intimidated by this stern-faced teenager until she started to speak. Her voice was low but friendlier than her tough frown would suggest. Hi, I'm handing out party favors. Do you want one? She showed you party hats. She insisted they were the key to a true party mood. She had two options, either a colorful headband with two teeny party hats arranged almost like ears, or a tiara with a star on it. They were both very festive.
It's okay.
No thanks. You knew the teen hadn't actually glared at him. Her default facial expression just seemed grim. You picked a crown. You pointed to the crown and the teenager passed it over to you with the solemnness of crowning a monarch. Then you let her go. Both of you had made your decision and that was good. The unknown teenager nodded approvingly at you both and went to pass out hats to more people. You put the party hat on your head with a smile and it fit well. It was surprisingly comfortable. It really completes your look. When did you get so fashionable? He smirked and you just adjusted your new accessory. It does look very good on me, thanks. You looked him straight in the eye and he seemed unsure of how to handle that reaction to his statement. You floundered for a second until he came up with a response. You don't have to brag. You struck a pose and he rolled his eyes. After that, the people in charge quickly set up the next game. Teenagers milled about until they were told to find partners. You tried to listen to the rules, straining your ears to listen to the adult announcing what you were supposed to do. It was a simple game. One person in a pair would throw candy while the other had to catch it in their mouth. If they caught it, the pair would move on to the next round where everyone would take a step back and the former catcher would become the thrower. The game would continue, the players getting further and further until one set of partners were the only ones left standing, or everyone lost in a round. About half of the guests had already found partners. They moved fast. You noticed Cove had his eyes on you. Could we be partners? Neither of you were all that familiar with anyone else here. It'd be the safe choice to pair up. Let's do it, partner. Cool. He beamed and you started wondering about your respective candy-catching capabilities. Two rows of players facing each other formed. Cove tilted his head toward them and you started to head over. You both lined up directly in front of each other. It took a while to pass out the candy. You were handed a small bag of gummies that smelled strong and fruity. You noticed Cove took it upon himself to do a taste test of a red one across from you. They're not bad. What does it taste like? Raspberry or cherry? It's red, so strawberry? Maybe pomegranate? It was a mystery. Maybe you'd get a red one later. And then it was time to begin. Cove's row was set to throw first. He smiled nervously, his eyes wide with seriousness. You smiled back shyly and Cove nodded. The game was on. The adult in charge shouted for the throwers to go. You and Cove were only a couple of feet away from each other. With Cove's careful toss, you caught the candy easily. Like you, most of the other players moved into the next round. There were a few gaps in the row as everyone took a step back. The round was harder with the pairs further apart, but not overly so. It could be done if both partners tried. You did your best as you tossed it. You carefully plucked a gummy from the bag and felt the weight. You shifted it in your hand a couple of times for practice and then told Cove you were ready. You went for an underhanded throw, careful to aim for Cove's mouth. The blue candy arced and landed perfectly in Cove's mouth. You chewed it twice and then smiled widely. You could tell Cove was genuinely pleased to make it through another round. You were happy as well. The next round began and you took another step back. Cove was even further away now, but he made an okay sign. He was in this to win it. Around you, the once packed rows of players had thinned out some. You wondered how many rounds everyone had left in them. Cove swung his arm and made eye contact with you. You nodded, and the green candy flew towards you. You tried your best to catch it. You followed the arc of the candy and opened your mouth wide. It had a slight spin on it, and you tilted your head to the left to compensate. You bit down on the candy, grinning with your victorious catch. It tasted sweet and vaguely like Slurpee. Yeah, Claire! Cove was thrilled. He was entirely invested in the game at this point. You and Cove were still in the game. You knew this was the final round. Only a few other pairs were still left. Cove was determined to win. You could see it in the clench of his jaw, the careful way he watched you. You didn't want to let him down. This game meant something to Cove, and you respected that. You were going to be here for your partner, and if you wanted to win, well, you needed to try your best. Cove gave you a firm grin, and you prepared to throw. Your fingers grabbed an orange gummy from the bag. It felt solid in your grasp, even if your hand was starting to get sticky from touching all the sugary sweets. Cove leaned his face towards you and bent his knees, ready to catch. The time came. You looked at the candy, and then Cove. You tried your best. You heard him make a small squeak, and Cove blinked as the orange candy bounced off his face. You gasped. You didn't mean for things to end like that. But you both were out of the game, so you walked over to the crowd of other people who lost. The game wrapped up, and you clapped for the winning pair, two teeny girls around your age. They were handed more candy as a prize, and everyone dispersed from there. With the candy toss over, you were going to need something else to do. You didn't have to wait long. You heard someone in the crowd shout that the bouncy house was officially open for older kids. You and Cove shared a look. Cove smiled, and you knew he wanted in. You both ran over to the bouncy castle and kicked your shoes off. You crawled into the inflated castle with Cove hot on your heels. There were a couple of other teens inside already. You started to get a feel for bouncing. Cove hopped from the middle to the side and back. Just after you landed from a particularly high jump, someone else snuck in. It was the birthday girl herself. Hi, Miranda. You waved. Miranda looked happy. She waved both her hands at you with a megawatt grin. I hope you're having fun. She hopped around with her hands in front of her like a kangaroo. It was a surprisingly effective way to clear distance in the bounce house. She then jumped high, kicking both her legs out to the side and touching the tips of her toes with her fingers. Wow! Miranda hadn't run out of tricks yet. She jumped a couple more times, gaining height before doing a backflip and tucking into a ball. She managed to land on her feet, but didn't stick the landing. She tumbled back and fell on her butt. Cove clapped and Miranda inclined her head, almost like a bow. She was back to jumping in no time. You're so good at this. She bounced close enough to the two of you to talk without shouting across the way. Cove's bouncing slowed down to accommodate their conversation.
My family gets these every year. And we have a trampoline in the backyard.
That's really cool. Miranda giggled a bit and then her eyes sparkled. Hey, I can launch someone if you want. If I jump in front of you, then your bounce will go higher. Not me. That's okay, we can still have fun. Can you launch me? Miranda didn't hesitate. She started jumping with more force and getting closer to Cove. Of course! You watched as Miranda told Cove how he'd get the best results. She gave him a count and tried to time it so that he'd jump right when she touched down. You stood a few feet away, but even then you caught some of the energy from their bounces. The bounce house floor rippled slightly under your feet. Excuse me. Cove took turns launching Miranda after he understood how it worked. She, in turn, did tricks that wouldn't be possible without the added height. It was exciting to watch. You all had fun bouncing around. You twirled, Miranda did stunts. Cove futilely tried to touch the highest tip of the castle ceiling. You and Cove chatted to Miranda more than you ever had at school. She truly was the queen of this bouncy castle. Whenever someone did something cool, everyone would cheer. If you fell, the others would help you up. Eventually, more people wanted to take turns in the bouncy house, so you and Cove left. As you slipped on your shoes, you saw Miranda get drawn into conversation with a group of adults. She would be talking to them for a while. You and Cove decided to take a break and hydrate. You went to the party table and grabbed some ice water. Cove handed you a party noisemaker he'd picked up from the same table. He blew on his, and it made a funny sound when it unrolled. Cove drowned his drink in a couple of gulps. He had gotten pretty into bouncing after all. You were still sipping on your water when Cove blew on his noisemaker again, then again, and again. It was almost a tune. You didn't recognize any particular melody, but a noisemaker also isn't an instrument. The noise cut through the hum of the other party guests, loud and noticeable. You were amused at Cove's antics. You laughed and Cove started blowing it more towards you. He leaned in so that the tip of the unfurled paper nearly booped your nose. You stepped back and shook your head fondly. You jokingly tried to get away. You slid to the side and dramatically dodged his noisemaker. He followed you and struck again with a particularly loud doot. You laughed when he missed and tried not to yell when he got close.
Oh, great. You people again.
Ah! Someone vaguely familiar shouted, and you snapped your head to the side. Cove's noisemaker dropped from his mouth. The speaker stepped out, and there was no doubt. It was Jeremy, that mean boy you met at the start of summer. Oh, hey, it's Bulkhead Kid. You tried being polite. Hi, how are you? Your greeting went unacknowledged, and Jeremy's scowl didn't change. Why are you here? Covestone was defensive. You watched Jeremy's face turn slack, as if Cove's question was the idiocy above all idiocies. Didn't I already explain this? He hadn't, so both you and Cove exchanged a look. Do you have memory loss, or are you really that stupid? Seriously.
Walk here.
My parents brought me, apparently. I couldn't just stay inside like I wanted. No, they insisted that I get out and enjoy the day and have fun on vacation. Blah, blah, blah. He said enjoy the day and have fun on vacation like some people would say scrub the entire bathroom or listen to an off-key singer for 10 hours. They found a park, 'cause I hate the beach. Too bad I also hate parks. Ugh, it's dirty here. They don't know anything. Oh, and then they saw this stupid party and decided to bother some adults by asking what was going on. They think maybe we could be included. It's moronic. Get it now? That's how my parents are, annoying and embracing. Why would anybody want strangers at their birthday? Why can't they ever just leave things alone? He huffed loudly and his eyes shot daggers at some grown-ups that presumably were his parents. You try to be friendly and welcome Jeremy to the park. Well, you're here now. Maybe you can make the best of it. And maybe you can shut your dumb face. Jeremy's eyes slipped away from you to take in the rest of the park for a bit. It was a little awkward. It was possible he didn't know what to do, but then he spoke again.
So dumb.
How can people really go around in these embracing party hats? Do they think it's fun or something? How could a human being be so How could a human being be so dumb? Gosh, Jeremy. Jeremy shook his head and glanced at Cove's lack of hat. I guess that's one brain point for you. It's just kind of nice to do party stuff. Jeremy scoffed, unimpressed. The expression on his face was nasty as he spoke. I'm not surprised an empty-headed person like you would think that. Jeremy looked you over, completely dismissive. It's so rude you can't help but feel offended. Cole's face hardened. He seemed more offended than when anyone actually insulted him personally. Just because you don't know how to be happy doesn't mean no one else does. And it's not our fault if you hate everything. It's not okay for you to take it out on Eclair. She isn't doing anything wrong. You are. Jeremy seemed unfazed by Cove's defense and sniffed. Eclair can humiliate herself on her own. She doesn't need you to step in and do it for her. Oh boy. You stood still, shocked. You didn't know what to do. You were utterly stunned by his behavior. Jeremy raised an eyebrow and grimaced. How are you going to handle the real world? People were starting to watch what was going down. Your argument wasn't exactly quiet at this point. Why don't you just leave us alone if we're so awful? Jeremy glared even more and huffed. Talking to you is pointless. He stalked off like the last time you saw him, muttering under his breath. Cove sighed in relief after Jeremy was gone. He relaxed, but only for a moment. He noticed just how much attention you'd drawn from the other guests. Luckily, it hadn't gone on long enough to see a real crowd. A concerned adult in blue button-up shirt approached you and asked who that was and if everyone was all right.
Okay.
I'm fine. Cove looked at you cautiously, asking just as much as the adult if you were okay. Yeah, I'm fine too. Thank you. The concerned adult lingered a few seconds, but nodded and left you alone. The Jeremy fiasco was officially over. Cove rubbed his eyes, clearly ready to put all that nonsense behind him. Then he started laughing. It was a surprise laugh, breaking out of his chest, without any actual joy. It was nervous and disbelieving and all the complex emotions brought about by one meeting with Jeremy. I can't believe it. He spoke in fits and starts. How could Jeremy be like that? He shouts at us, he barely knows us, and it was at a birthday party for somebody he's never met. Wish that you'd done something more. I just feel like I should have said something. Maybe done something? I don't know. Cove seemed to think about his next words carefully before he spoke. I don't think it matters what we do around him. Jeremy's just gonna yell no matter what. We shouldn't worry about it. Do you want to tell your moms about Jeremy, I mean? He always picks a fight. Maybe they know how to handle someone like him. Thanks for asking. You decided to bring it up to your moms later. I'll let them know everything. Okay. Finally, you bent over to pick up the noisemaker that Cove dropped when Jeremy appeared. It might be too dirty to use now, but you didn't want to leave it there. He accepted it softly when you offered the little favor back to him. Thanks, Eclair. I like how we can be there for each other. It makes me feel better about that kind of stuff when it happens. Yeah. Cove suggested that you should find a seat at one of the tables. It was almost cake time, and he wanted to be prepared. It was a good reminder that the party wasn't over yet. I think I see somewhere free there, if that works for you. You and Cove tried to settle down after the last event. You took seats across from one another on one of the park tables. There were a few attempts to chat, but for the most part, you simply watched the adults run around to set up the cake cutting. There was a minor panic when who you assumed was Miranda's dad apparently forgot the lighter for the candles. He and another man went through and started asking the other adults for matches or lighters. They weren't having any luck until the grim-faced teenager who had been passing out party hats pulled a green lighter out of the ice cream cooler. Why the lighter was put in the cooler remained a mystery, but with party hat girls find it was time to get things going again. Miranda sat at the head of the longest table. A large chocolate cake was set in front of her. She lit all 14 candles with the cooler lighter with a big smile. The adults started singing happy birthday and the rest of the guests joined in. At the end of the song, Miranda blew out the candles with a dedicated huff. She closed her eyes and you saw her silently mouth something. Maybe it was a birthday wish. Miranda cut her own slice, then one of the grown-ups took over cutting the cake. Another adult passed around plates of cake slices with a scoop of vanilla ice cream to the guests. Eventually, the cake got around to you and Cove. Cove was pleased with the treat in general. The cake looked rich and moist. It smelled quite chocolatey. He took a bite of ice cream. The vanilla wasn't bad, but it was a little bland. The chocolate cake, however, was rich in flavor. Cove then took his fork and started mashing up some of his cake. When the cake resembled a pile of crumbly chunks, he started mixing it into the ice cream. The melted parts of the ice cream made a kind of chocolate cake soup. He raised an eyebrow. You were puzzled at what he was doing. Cove paid no mind. Vanilla ice cream is not good by itself, and I'm gonna eat it with the cake either way, so why not put them together now? Things like ice cream, cake exist. Putting stuff together is normal. Cove contentedly chowed down on his concoction. One advantage to his mix is that the ice cream seemed to catch most of the crumbs that would usually fall from eating the cake. Unlike some of the kids around him, Cove's shirt remained clean. You started eating your dessert in earnest. You enjoyed yourself plenty. Miranda then started to open her gifts. She systematically attacked the mountain of presents like a pro. She checked for any cards and read them aloud before opening a gift. She smiled at every present, including the ones you and Cove got her. You were glad the presents were accepted. It took time, but eventually Miranda got through all the gifts. She was very sweet and polite throughout it all. The party went until the sun began to set. By that point, everything had settled down and people had begun to leave. Any of the guests whose parents had stayed for the party were already gone, except for Miranda's family. Only a few kids still waited for their parents to come get them. It remained you and Cove included. Miranda's family were cleaning up, and as guests, neither you nor Cove were supposed to help with that. Instead, you both had decided to take it easy in the bouncing castle. It was somewhere out of the way where you could casually wait for your ride. Miranda had also elected to hang out with you. You weren't even bouncing anymore. Cove laid on his side with his back to the wall, and Miranda sat across from him with her legs stretched out. You had also made yourself comfortable. It was nice and warm in the little building. It also felt like you had some privacy, which was nice. You could all speak openly here. Thanks for coming. She looked down but continued shyly. It's been really cool to get to hang out with you a little bit. Thanks for letting me come. I didn't think I'd be invited. Thanks from me too, Miranda. Miranda just smiled a little more. So, did you notice anything happening earlier with some people you didn't know showing up? She had to think about his question a little. It was apparent that she didn't have an encounter with Jeremy since there was no instant recognition. I heard about something. Some other parents were talking to my parents when their kid came and forced them to leave the park. She tilted her head to the side, finding it weird, but also not important. Then everyone had cake and ice cream. Cove smiled uncomfortably. That's good. He was clearly worried that Jeremy's confrontation could have gotten to her. Luckily, it didn't seem that anyone had overheard or passed along Jeremy's cruel words. Cole rolled over on his back and sighed contentedly. Miranda seemed confused, but wasn't going to push. He changed the subject. What are you gonna do with all those gifts? It's been a mountain of stuff. Miranda laughed.
I don't know.
I'm gonna
have to find a way to get them all in my room.
Yeah. Cove gave a vent smile and made a suggestion. You can carry some in that backpack you got. She giggled and clapped her hands with delight. That's true. You all continued chatting in a laid-back manner until it was time to go home. At the end of the day, you thought it had been quite the party. Oh, and there's those 5. Alright, so that's the end of step 2, and next week we'll be looking at step 3.